Insurance isn't one size fits all, and shopping for it shouldn't feel like squeezing into something that just doesn't fit. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they show you options that fit your budget. Enough hunting for discounts, trying to calculate rates, and tinkering with coverages. Maybe you're picking out your very first policy, or maybe you're just looking for something that works better for you and your family. Either way, they make it simple to see your options. No guesswork, no surprises. Ready to see how easy and fun shopping for car insurance can be? Visit Progressive.com and give the Name Your Price tool a try. Take the stress out of shopping and find coverage that fits your life, on your terms. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode number 825 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. Donald Wine here. Happy Memorial Day weekend. We should also take a minute to observe what Memorial Day is all about, and that is honoring the soldiers who gave the ultimate sacrifice. Jason Evans is also with me. Jason, first off, hope you're having a decent start to the weekend so far. It's been raining here, in D.C., and it's going to be raining all weekend. I went to the Tigers game last night, and somehow they got it in, despite the fact that there was a lot of rain. But how's it down in Atlanta? A lot of things popping up in your neck of the woods coming soon in my world of soccer.
Yeah, World Cup coming in just a few weeks. It's been raining here as well. We've desperately needed the rain. Like, it's been very, very dry. For several weeks, I was going out every other day or so. We planted some new hydrangea bushes, and I wanted to make sure that they got their full complement of water every day. And I have not needed to water for about a week now.
They're going to get it now. And for us, midweek, we had 3 record days. We had 96, 96, and 97 on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Today it's like 50 and raining. And it's going to be like this all weekend. And then, of course, after Memorial Day weekend, it's going to be back in the 70s like nothing happened. So sometimes that's how you get with the weather. But Jason, we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about basketball. We have 4 things we're going to talk about, 2 on one side of the break and 2 on the other side.
Well, wait, there's a fifth thing.
That
happened last night. Jared McCain happened.
Jared McCain is doing well for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, the Oklahoma City Thunder is probably the best team left, and they're going up against the second best team that's left in the Spurs. A great series if you have not been watching the NBA playoffs thus far. But yeah, Jason, talk about Jared McCain and his 24 points in the game.
Yeah, he went for 24 points in this game, and the impressive thing was it wasn't Jared McCain bombing from the outside. He took a lot of 3-pointers. He didn't hit a ton of them. Jared's been super hot from the perimeter in the playoffs, but that did not happen last night. Instead, it was Jared taking the ball into the lane. You know, Oklahoma City has so many 3-point shooters. They're so dangerous on offense that you're able to really get forays into the lane because there's so much spacing that Oklahoma City creates, especially in their second unit, I think, which absolutely dominated the Spurs last night. The bench guys I should have the stat in front of me. I want to say that the San Antonio bench the Oklahoma City bench outscored the San Antonio bench like 75-25 or something. It was something.
Yeah, it was something
crazy.
Ridiculous. Yeah,
it was an insane number like that. And Jared McCain was the guy leading the way, and he was leading it with forays to the basket, with taking guys off the dribble, not taking 3-pointers. In fact, he took Wemby one time. And finished like super athletically. He probably got fouled on the play. I was like, what is little Jared McCain doing, taking 7'5" Victor Wembanyama to the hole? But he was successful at it. Jared is absolutely showing that his game is varied, that he can score at the NBA level. He plays good defense. All Duke guys learn defense when they're on campus, believe me. And I'll go ahead and say it again. Sam Presti, the Oklahoma City GM, is just like next level, smarter than every other GM in the business by a lot. And he absolutely fleeced Daryl Morey at at Philadelphia when he got Jared McCain for a late first-round pick and a second-round pick. And Daryl Morey just stupidly, talked about that. We sold high. Daryl, I got news for you. You didn't sell high. Jared McCain looks like a really, really good NBA player.
I mean, you can tell Daryl Morey all you want because Daryl Morey is without a job, and this was one of the reasons why he is without a job. So, keep it going, Jared McCain. We love seeing you thrive in the NBA playoffs. Jason, let's talk about the Duke stuff on the basketball court. And the first thing is John Blackwell, who we knew this, but we have to say it. John Blackwell was never going to stay in the NBA draft, but he officially announced that he will exit the NBA draft process and will come to Duke for his senior season. Jason, again, this is a huge boost. I'm glad that he went out and got the advice and the guidance and all just the feedback from the NBA teams. I'm glad he went to the NBA draft combine and put in work there. He had some, flashes of why we are so excited to see him in a Duke uniform. He was able to do some good things there, but also hopefully take that confidence back to understand what he needs to do to get to the next level.
Yeah, look, playing at the combine meant that he was competing against really, elite, high-end college basketball players, and held his own quite nicely. There was, like you say, I don't think there was ever much of a question as to whether John Blackwell was going to stay in the draft. I know there were, look, the pain that we all felt by Cedric Coward committing to Duke and then going into the NBA draft. And I'm not blaming Cedric. He was a lottery pick. I mean, you cannot blame the kid one bit, but that's
it made all rookie. Good decision.
Look, but the pain we all felt when it happened, and then, the continuing sting as we saw him playing great for Memphis this year, and you were like, God, why didn't we get that guy in a Duke uniform? It made people a little gun shy. I don't blame the folks out there who were like, do you think Blackwell might stay in? Might he stay in? You and I knew he wasn't going to stay in. Anyone who sort of looked at where his draft stock was knew that this was not the same decision that Cedric Coward was making, not by any stretch of the imagination. John Rothstein, in fact, Rothstein did a little survey. He talked to 10 NBA GMs and asked them about various different guys, should the guy stay in college or should he go to the NBA? And all 10 of those NBA GMs said that John Blackwell should return to college, that there was no reason for him to stay around to the NBA draft. So the ultimate decision by John Blackwell is not at all of a surprise. And I want to be clear about something, by the way. I think it'd be easy to go, oh, Blackwell's not that great a player. He decided, he really didn't have much NBA stock, maybe late second round NBA draft stock. So, he's, and Duke's going to have multiple guys next year on the team who will have higher NBA stock than John Blackwell. And you go, maybe Blackwell isn't going to have that big an impact. No, you need to rethink things. Again, as we've said many, many times, dude shot nearly 40% from three while averaging 19 points per game in the Big Ten on an NCAA tournament team last year. He's going to have an impact. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. There's absolutely no question that this is going to be a very significant player. Probably, I would say right now, the odds are he will be the leading scorer for the Duke Blue Devils next season. NBA draft stock and college success are not automatically linked. They just aren't. And there are things about John Blackwell's game, things about his size, his measurables, his athleticism, that the NBA says, hang on, that gives me a little bit of pause. But those are not things that are going to hold him back at the college level. And I am unbelievably excited that we have now confirmed that John Blackwell will be in a Duke Blue Devil uniform next year because he's going to be a hell of a player for Duke.
I mean, look, the same chatter online about John Blackwell staying in the draft was the same chatter that said that Isaiah Evans was going to withdraw from the draft and come back to Duke. And Isaiah himself had to be like, no, I have not had talks with Duke about coming back. I'm fully in. Again, I'm not gonna make it make sense. I'll leave that to y'all to make it make sense because it doesn't. But I think at the end of the day, Jason, to your point, I think a lot of people also think that withdrawing from the draft means that he's not good or that he's not an NBA player. it just means that he's gotten feedback that he's not going to be one of the 59 draft picks this year. And that doesn't mean he's the 60th best player or the 80th best player. It just means that the odds were against him being drafted this year at a level that would encourage him to want to stay in. He's going to make, X million of dollars at Duke, which is going to be more than he would make getting drafted anywhere in the second round, essentially, in this draft. And of course, we've talked about this. The first 10 draft picks are probably going to be freshmen in this NBA draft. This is one of the deeper drafts that people are saying is happening in a very long time. And next year is supposed to not be a deep draft. So, hey, take your chances. Come back. You star at Duke. The world is going to be your oyster, because guess what? We have brotherhood on like 25 of the 30 teams. So you're going to have people watching you every single game and understanding what you could take. So I'm really excited about having him in uniform, getting to know his teammates better, and just that competition, which is going to be terrific, Jason. Just that competition at point guard for the playing time on the floor, all these guys working together for the common good of hopefully being in my hometown, Detroit, lifting the trophy as national champions next April. Speaking of competition, Jason, let's talk about something that we have talked about on this show before, but we didn't talk about it in this context. Duke, Kansas. A couple years ago, before we played in Vegas, I told you that I had heard some rumblings that not only were we playing Kansas in Vegas
for the Champions Classic, yeah.
No. This was just the standalone game in Las Vegas.
Right. Yes. Sorry.
We then played them last year in the Champions Classic, and it was supposed to be part of this multi-year thing where it was going to include a home and home, where Duke would go to Fog Allen Fieldhouse and then Kansas would come to Cameron. And they were trying to work out how those dates were going to happen. Well, we're getting chatter. I actually heard last night from that same person who tipped me off about the game in Vegas a couple years ago. And then there's now social media chatter from reputable sources that are saying that Duke will indeed play Kansas in a preseason game at Fog Allen Fieldhouse this year. Now, they didn't speak about what that would mean, if it's going to be like the Tennessee venture that we have.
Well, I'm going to tell you that what I've heard from my sources is that this is a home and home. I don't know why. I don't know why you wouldn't do it as a home. Like if you're Kansas,
right?
You would. If you're Kansas, you want to go play in Cameron. If you're Duke, you want to play in Fog.
Correct.
And you also want. Well, I'll go ahead. If I can, let me get into sort of what I think is happening a little bit here. Last year Duke had we had this game with Tennessee that we played at Tennessee. And even though it has not been officially announced, all the talk is that Tennessee is going to play a return game in Cameron this year.
And that happened last year when we announced that game. The chatter even then was this was a home and home on the preseason circuit as opposed to during the regular season.
Right, and it looks like Duke is also arranging a preseason home and home now with Kansas. That'll one game in each year. Essentially, we get one high profile, big time opponent in Cameron and one on the road.
And this actually lines up with what we heard a few years ago, because if you think about the 4-year, 5-year plan, we played in Vegas one year. Last year, we played in the Champions Classic. We have a preseason game in Fog. We have a preseason game in Cameron. And then after that, the following year after that would be us once again playing each other in the Champions Classic. So it'd be a 5-year kind of series here, with 2 of them being preseason games and 3 of them being neutral site competitions.
Yeah, and again, the thing I was going to mention, what I'm getting a sense of, and I don't have access to all of Duke's finances, nor do I know exactly how Duke is figuring out scheduling kind of things. But my sense is that regular season games against high-profile opponents, the finances are that you play it on a neutral court. That there are just a lot of ways, in terms of ticket sales versus season tickets, in terms of broadcast rights versus, games played in Cameron. Duke kind of automatically has to put those on ESPN because of the ACC's contract with ESPN. There's a different calculus when it comes to games that are played on neutral floor. in terms of broadcast. Look, we're seeing that with the Amazon deal, even though ESPN is involved. I'm not saying that ESPN has no rights to it, but Duke just is the bottom line is the bottom line. Duke is able to earn more money when they play a high-profile opponent in a neutral setting, whether it be, the New York area, Washington, Atlanta, wherever it's Chicago, wherever it may be, than they make when they play that same opponent in Cameron when they do a home and home. So again, for high-profile opponents. And I think that Duke is cognizant of the fact that's a little bit unfair to the very, very generous season ticket folks who aren't getting the high-profile games, the non-conference high-profile games at home, unless it's in the ACC SEC Challenge every other year. So I think that Duke is now trying to find, hey, let's find a big-time exhibition. Because an exhibition game, if you did, I'm not saying Duke-Kansas exhibition game wouldn't do, big numbers on a neutral floor, but, it's not going to do, it's an exhibition. It's preseason. It's not going to do you can't have the same ticket price. You're not going to have the same kind of broadcast rights as you would for a regular season game. And as a result, I think Duke is like, hey, we can give our fans, those home court fans, the people in Durham, the people who come in and have season tickets, we can give them a big time game, but not, essentially cost ourselves one of these regular season games where we're making millions, frankly, millions of dollars on this Amazon deal. So I also think,
Jason,
yeah,
and I think the overall general point remains, but I think this is different, right? Because as you kind of said, if there's one gym that we as Duke fans would want to visit, it's Fog Allen. If there's one gym that Kansas fans would want to visit, it's Cameron. Those are the two atmospheres, the two gyms that are most heralded in college basketball. And
the Kentucky Rupp Arena, these folks are pissed off at you right now.
I don't care, because I'm a lawyer. The truth is an absolute defense, and I have the truth on my side.
I agree with you. I think that Cameron and Fog are 1 and 2. No question about it. And Rupp is probably number, you can get a Rupp, and there are probably a couple other places that would say, oh no, we're up there as well. But yeah, those are 1 and 2.
Those are the teams, right? And so I think the opportunity, and Jason, you talk about the season ticket holders. There's also the students as well, right? The students
that's
don't
a great point.
They're like, we keep asking the students to get up for these games against Clemson and NC State, and I'm not disparaging those teams in the ACC, but they see those teams every single year. They get more amped up when a Florida comes to town, when an Auburn comes to town, when a Michigan State comes to town, and in this case, this year Tennessee, and next year, assuming this all goes through, it'd be Kansas coming through. You don't have to ask them to get up for those games, and the fact that it's a preseason game, it gets them amped up for the season even earlier. Can you imagine how this team is going to be ready for the season by having Kansas and Tennessee, one on the road, one at home? I pray for the team we open up the season against, because these guys are going to be ready, right? And this is also an opportunity for John to say, look, we ain't ducking nothing. We don't have room in our schedule. We're still going to schedule Kansas. That's how, again, you get to prepare this team for the rigors of a college basketball season and to play against the teams that you think you will see in an NCAA tournament setting. That's partly why we do a bunch of neutral site games, because people love the home and homes. The people love going to each other's courts, and fans want that to happen. But the NCAA tournament is played on neutral sites. So we have even been strategic in where we play them. We're playing in the Garden. Why? We go there every year, but this year it's the East Regional site. We're playing in Detroit. Why? Because that's the Final Four, and we want to be in the same city a month later for the Final Four. So this is all strategic, but it also ties into the greater competition phase, both within the team and also against other teams. And I just love the fact that, first of all, if there's one thing the NCAA has done right in the last 5 years, is allowing these type of games to happen now, because before they wouldn't let you do it. We had to do these closed door scrimmages, air quotes, where everyone knew the final score. They wouldn't even do like a full game. but now we can put this out in court and we can make some money off of it. The Brotherhood Run was something that we started a couple years ago when we were able to do this to raise money for the Emily K Center, or I'm sorry, for Duke Children's. And so again, these sort of things can happen now because of this opening of the schedule to allow you to play teams that you could see in the regular season.
Well, I think it's, the other fun thing about this is we're going to get to see Tyrann Stokes. In fact, it may
number
be
one recruit.
It may be the first time everybody gets a really good look at Tyrann Stokes. I mean, I don't know how they're going to, schedule these, whether the Kansas game or the Tennessee game will come first. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Kansas is going to be a very, very good team, and they're going to have a guy who a lot of people say is going to be in contention for National Player of the Year. So it'll be everything about this. This is a great way. Frankly, the way college basketball has evolved over the past couple of years to have more and more big exhibition games, more and more top teams facing each other early in the season. I know that some of the holiday tournaments are really going away, or the top teams aren't playing in them other than the Players era. And they're trying to organize that thing for next year, the Diamond something or other.
Diamond era, yeah.
Yeah, Duke was very, very involved in that, and then we found out, oh wait, we can do this Amazon deal and make way more money. But in any event, college basketball, I think, is doing a better job of getting into people's consciousness. Not necessarily our listeners. Our listeners are paying attention. If you're listening to this now, you're someone who's paying attention to college basketball in October and November and December. But there are a lot of people out there who don't pay a lot of attention to college basketball until you get to January or February. And I think having these really, really high-profile matches earlier in the year, it begins to make people, get people acquainted with the players that they need to know about. Especially with so many guys switching teams and the such. Yeah, there are going to be people out there after Duke plays Kansas who are going to be like, John Blackwell's not, I didn't even realize that John Blackwell had moved from Wisconsin to Duke. There are going to be people in the Midwest who are like, I didn't. So that's what happened. But it all, it just raises the profile of the sport, and that's a really good thing for everybody involved with college basketball.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Hopefully it gets official very, very soon, and we can hear more about what their plans are to even the broadcast, right? Because even before those preseason games against the Division III teams, those are only available online. You have to pay for Blue Devil Network to basically get those games on TV. And really, it was on your computer. And now, that Tennessee game was on national TV. It was like a regular season production broadcast. So you're going to get to see some of these high-profile matchups in the preseason. And I, for one, love it, Jason. I know you do as well. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to get international. We're going to talk about our incoming international recruit and how well he's doing over in EuroLeague, and an international rule that could shape how some teams recruit international players. More after this. All right, we're back. We are turning our attention across the pond. We're not doing soccer over here, but we're going to talk basketball across the pond. And Jason, we're going to talk about Joaquim Boumtje Boumtje, because I know you've watched what he's been doing in the Next Gen tournament over there in Europe. But man, just the clips. I haven't watched a lot of the games, but if you just see the clips of what he's doing, dare I say, this might be a guy who we thought was going to sit on the bench and learn. He's got 2 years before he's draft eligible. That man is playing like he wants to be a starter right now.
Oh boy, yeah, it's a lot. So the next gen, the EuroLeague next gen tournament that's happening is under 18. So this is functionally guys who are like the equivalent to high school seniors, juniors, and seniors. It's mostly. Especially on this part of the Americans, I'll talk about that in a second. It's mostly class of 2027 guys, not class of 2026 guys. But these are, this is the equivalent to the European EYBL or 3SSB, which are the two big high school tournaments. And honestly, right now they're wrapping up the end of group play, and the Barcelona team that Boom Boom plays on is about to conclude group play undefeated, and they will be advancing to the championship game. And they look absolutely like the best team in this tournament. Ridiculously loaded squad. This Barcelona squad. Donald, I know it bothers you. You're a Madrid fan. This Barcelona.
Allah.
This Barcelona squad just is full of really, really good young basketball players. It really feels like, I've watched a bit of the games, the best player in this tournament of all these guys, and it's not just Europeans. There are some top tier class of 2027 Americans playing in this tournament. There's an Adidas team, a 3 SSB team that features, I think it's at least 3 guys who are considered in the top 10 of the 2027 class. A really, really good high school players, Americans. And JBB, Boom Boom, is absolutely the best player in this tournament. There's sort of no question about it. So let's start with what he did yesterday, Friday, because that's what really lit up the internet. He scored 24 points as his team, won by 30. They just absolutely slapped the other team they were playing. Barcelona did. He scored 24 points in 22 minutes. The way he scored those 24 points, Donald, was bombing from 3. He was 5 of 6 on 3-pointers. I want to point out something, by the way. These were not wide open. It wasn't like a dude drove and then passed it out to Boom Boom and Boom Boom took a wide open easy 3. A lot of these were off the dribble. He was closely guarded. He was just, it was incredible to watch. Really smooth. He elevates really nicely on that 3-point jumper. And you were like, oh my God, I mean, this guy, he's just a dominant player. Even though he's 7 feet tall, he's a dominant 3-point shooter. So let's fast forward to today. And today was the game I was really looking forward to because, again, this was the game today that Barcelona played against these Adidas All-Stars, these high school All-Stars that Adidas has brought over for this EuroLeague tournament. And today, and by the way, Barcelona again won going away by 30, close to 30 points. Boom Boom goes for 22 points today, and he didn't do it by shooting 3-pointers. This is the thing that's so impressive about this kid. Yesterday was 5 of 6 on 3-pointers. Today he was just 1 of 4. Of course, that makes him 6 of 10 over the past 2 days. I'll take that over my 3-point shooting. So how'd he score his 22 points? He was driving the ball from the wing. He was getting it, taking guys off the dribble. He was making moves in the post. He's 7 feet and really, really long, but he has just, elite post moves and really good finishing. He uses his length to finish really, really well. He was 8 of 11 on 2-point field goals today. So yesterday, 5 of 6 on 3-pointers. Today, 8 of 11 on 2-pointers. By the way, he also had 11 rebounds and 2 blocked shots today. I don't know what to say other than the kid can do it all. By the way, he quite often he'll take a rebound and just go the other direction and dribble the ball all the way up the floor and get a slam dunk. He has very good dribbling skills. He's able to see the floor. He's a nice passer, gets assists. He does things a 16-year-old 7-footer shouldn't be able to do. That's just the trick. I can't figure out where he falls in this Duke rotation. I wish I could be a fly on the wall, Donald, when all these guys arrive. My understanding is in the next week or so that all the guys are going to start
Academy's coming up, and that's usually when a lot of them end up on campus.
Yeah, these guys are going to start arriving over the next week to 10 days or so. And I'm dying to see, the first scrimmages, the first practices, as they begin to play together and we begin to get maybe some senses of what the rotation's like. Is JBB far back in the rotation? Is Cam Williams the 4 and JBB is far back in that rotation? Maybe. On the other hand, is JBB maybe so elite and so skilled that even at 16 years old, he's forced his way into being the starting 4? Maybe. It's crazy to think about what the ceiling is on this guy. I mean, probably at this moment, the number 1 pick in the 2028 draft. He is just that good.
I mean, look, he's still 16. He's still growing up and wide. He could be, I mean, he was 6'11" when we officially recruited him, right? When he officially committed, they said he was 6'11". He's listed at 7 feet with Barca. He might be 7'1" by the time the season starts. That's how quickly he's growing. And I think also I'm really interested to see how he's going to adapt to the physicality, because that's something that you can't really replicate over in Europe, and especially at a U18 tournament. These guys aren't banging in the post like he is going to have to do on the college level and the NBA level. So I'm curious to see how that's going to translate when he gets here.
Like I said, even though he gets in the post and scores a pretty good bit, he's basically playing. I feel he's playing like a 3 almost for this Barca team.
Yeah, that's what
Barca's got
several.
They've got several centers, several post guys, including Sean Kita, who's headed to UNC, who's really good. He just can't get a lot of playing time on this team because they've got a guy named Mohamed Debone, who supposedly is 14 years. I don't believe that Debone is 14 years old. He's 14. Supposedly he's 14. Supposedly he's 7'1" or 7'2" or something like that. He's a dominant player. By the way, in this game that Boom Boom had 22, he had 25. Like supposedly at 14 years old. Again, I don't believe that he's 14, but this Barca team is like loaded with big men, and as a result, Boom Boom gets to play on the wing mostly. He probably is technically playing the 4, but he really plays like a 3 for them in terms of how much he handles the ball, in terms of sort of where he places himself on the floor and stuff like that. So, I mean, good Lord.
I was going to say that the European equivalent of the way that he's been playing so far, a guy who you believe to be a 4 but plays more like a 3, is like a Kristaps Porzingis, right? Like where you can, he shoots a lot of threes. He's not getting into the post and doing back to the basket, but he's able to do that, especially because everyone he lines up against is like 4 inches shorter than him. Exactly. At the very minimum. So he has that kind of game in his bag, and again, as that evolves, and he has 2 years to get that ready for the NBA, and hopefully both of those years are spent thriving in the Duke offense. But I'm really loving what I'm seeing from him. And Jason, the only positive I'll take from him being on FC Barcelona is that we're stealing one of their best players. And they're gonna suck again, a la Madrid. And that's all I have to say about FC Barcelona this season. Jason, let's move on, because there's one final thing that we want to cover, and it's again staying international. And to set this up, obviously a lot of people have been upset, damn near angry at how Will Wade, the former NC State head coach, the former LSU head coach, and now the new LSU coach again, has been recruiting a bunch of international players and G League players who have professional basketball experience to come to LSU to play. Now,
Donald, I should note the significant thing is not just that he's getting international players. This is not like North Carolina getting Sean Kita. It's not like Duke getting JBB. It's not like Duke getting Dame Sarr. He's getting guys who are like 23, 24, 25, 26.
Yeah, I was going to say there was a difference. I was going to note the difference in what he was going after. And as guys that have been, one of his players that he recruited has been in the EuroLeague for several years as an adult. Not like a kid who kind of came up and all of a sudden was planted on the first team and Will Wade magically found him. These are guys who are on, they're getting rewards for how they play in EuroLeague because
one of
how
them,
good they are.
The Israeli guy that he got, I believe, is 26 years old and was drafted in 2020.
Yes, he has a 2020 draftee, he has a 2025 draftee, he has a 2023 draftee, I want to say. And almost everybody that he has, save I think for the guy who was drafted last year, are all in their like late early 20s, right? They're 23, 24, sometimes 25, 26. But this has prompted the NCAA to issue some guidance on how these things should work, because notably, of course, we got Dame Sarr last year from FC Barcelona. We have Joaquim Boumtje Boumtje this year coming from FC Barcelona. And there's, guys like Tista Ritter and basically half of the Illinois team last year who all came from abroad. There's been a nice wave of guys coming from abroad, and we actually appreciate that. But the NCAA is trying to crack down on some of the older players that have EuroLeague experience. And now EuroLeague, as we've said on this show before, the ACB, which is Spain's domestic league, is the best domestic league in the world outside of the NBA. The EuroLeague, which is basically the best teams in all of Europe, that is the best league in Europe. That is the premier competition in Europe and the best basketball league in the world outside of the NBA. If you make it in EuroLeague, chances are that translates as much to the NBA than any other league coming to the NBA. But they're trying to crack down on some of these older players from these leagues that have real world professional basketball experience to be able to come. Now, the issue is how this guidance was issued in my mind. And Jason, I'll let you talk about the what they're trying to do here. And then I'll explain, put my lawyer hat on for a second and explain why what they're doing is the wrong approach, because it's actually opened the doors for a lot of things that could affect this Duke team.
Yeah. So basically what the NCAA has said is that they are going to sort of, I guess, take a second look, or take a more sophisticated look at what's known as necessary expenses. The NCAA allows you to recruit, to bring in players who had a contract with their team. Let's separate this from NIL, because there's pay for play, which is a contract with a team to perform for that team, and then there's NIL, which is outside money. And yes, I know there's a very, very gray area sort of in between the two that honestly, Duke is all the guys at Duke are being paid to play, but the NCAA sort of pretends like that doesn't happen. They pretend like Duke's paying them for their name, image, and likeness as opposed to for their skills. But in Europe, they don't term it as NIL. It's a player's contract. The NCAA allows you to maintain NCAA eligibility if you are only paid what they refer to as necessary expenses, room and board, travel, all that other kind of stuff. And I want to say, Donald, it tops out around like $50,000 or $70,000 a year, somewhere in that kind of ballpark.
So that was the general notion, but in true NCAA form, they never codified what the actual number would be, because they didn't want to be put into a situation where someone goes, oh, well, this guy who is making, the threshold's 50,000, this guy's making $49,999, so he should be fine. They wanted to evaluate on a case-by-case basis with the actual necessary expenses clause.
Right. So for example, when a guy like Dame Sarr came to play for Duke after playing for FC Barcelona, and you mentioned he played on their EuroLeague team, he played on their regular team, and but didn't play a ton for them. But when Dame came over, if he earned anything over what the necessary expenses threshold would have been, then he would have had to pay that back to have eligibility at Duke. I don't know exactly what Dame was paid when he was playing for Barcelona, but my bet would be that there probably was something that he had to pay back, a little bit of money that had to be paid back for him to have eligibility at Duke. What the NCAA is now saying is they're going to take a long look at guys, especially guys who've been playing EuroLeague for multiple years. Again, someone like Dame, who really did it for a year, maybe. Yeah, I think Dame had played 1 year of EuroLeague. I think he played 2 years with FC Barcelona. Someone like JBB, who has not played at all on Barca's first team. Yeah, he's only played on the youth team. I think in those circumstances, the NCAA is like, that's okay. What the NCAA doesn't like is the guys who are 20, like we said, 23, 24, 25 years old, who've been playing on top European clubs for 2, 3, 4, 5+ years, making legitimate European salaries, probably in most cases making six figures, probably some of these guys making, $2, 3, maybe even $400,000 a year playing in the European leagues, and then coming to America, and the NCAA is basically saying, we're going to, these guys' eligibility is in major question. Donald, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the ambiguity here and the legalese of it. I'm going to just say before I wrap up, I think that like the guys that LSU has recruited, the NCAA very well may say these guys are not coming over. I think it's possible that like the NCAA may take a long look at like a Tista Ritter of Virginia, who was 23 as a freshman and had played multiple years of EuroLeague. But I think that the younger guys, the guys who only have maybe a year or two at the most, the guys who are 18, 19, maybe 20 years old, those guys coming over, I think the NCAA is probably going to be fine with that they're going to say that, and look, it's a mystery. But my gut is that the guys Duke has recruited are going to be fine. I don't know about some of these others.
So let's back up, because I think to understand the context of this, we have to go back and remind folks that they don't have high school ball like we have high school ball, right? Their high school ball is played on these U18 teams for these professional teams, and they make money doing it. It's a reason why for years there weren't a lot of international players that came over to play college basketball, because they were already making money in Europe to stay, and so they would just stay and kind of thrive in that environment until it was time to go to the NBA draft.
Luka Doncic is the greatest example. Yeah.
I mean, he's not even the greatest example. He's one of 1,000 examples of guys who did that. But because he didn't go to high school at Real Madrid, he played professionally at Real Madrid. But I think the fact that they don't have a high school system set up is partly why this is ambiguous. Because the first thing is, in the Sports Illustrated article that kind of discusses this new rule, they got a statement from the NCAA about the guidance that they're going to be relying upon when discussing some of these case-by-case bases. So I want to read that quote because I think in there lies the ambiguity. The quote is, "Actual and necessary expenses continue to be a factor in a prospect's eligibility, but as part of that broader effort to update pre-enrollment rules, the NCAA also identified several international leagues in which participation by a prospect is likely to result in violations of NCAA rules and a loss of eligibility. The association is modernizing the rulebook in several ways to ensure college sports are played by college athletes and not used as a fallback for professional athletes. And the age-based eligibility model now under consideration is designed to address many member schools' concerns regarding eligibility," end quote. Now, here's where the ambiguity lies. It's in the actual necessary expenses clause, Jason, that we mentioned for Dame Sarr, is the Duke example, so we'll use him. That was ruled to be fine. And like you said, if he made $1 more than whatever that threshold was, if he paid it back, he was good to go.
Yep.
And he's mentioned in this SI article as one of the examples of, hey, the NCAA saw Dame Sarr's recruitment to Duke and said, everything's above board there. Everything's cool. The issue is with the application of their guidance. And when they say participation by a prospect in one of several leagues, of which the ACB is one, with which EuroLeague is definitely one, that would hinder or likely to result in violations of NCAA rules and a loss of eligibility. That is where, at least on its face, as an attorney, that was the red flag for me, as to say, hey, they need to make sure Dame Sarr especially is okay with regards to what they had in place last year, and that this is only going to be applied for pre-enrollment moving forward, right? Because I think there's two things here. One, all these guys, again, they're basically rendering anybody who plays in Spain, anybody who plays in the EuroLeague, anybody who plays in Italy, anybody who plays in France, you're ruling those guys ineligible for college off the bat just because they grew up there and they played in their air quotes high school system in those leagues, because those leagues are on this list. Same would go for the NBL in Australia, where, you know, again, we got Tyrese Proctor right through their NBA development program. And so you have these issues, and I didn't see the full list, but they mentioned those leagues, which everyone agrees is the best leagues in the world outside of the NBA. And so there's that part. But there's also this, Jason. If Dame Sarr was born in Brooklyn, he could make as much money as he wanted in high school now. and come to college and play.
Yeah.
And so the NCAA is going to have a serious problem because a lot of people are saying, well, I believe they're going to apply it this way. But the guidance doesn't say that and the rule doesn't say that. And because of that, as an attorney, somebody is going to come through and say, hey, if you're applying it to this guy, you got to apply it to this player over here. You got to apply it to this guy over here. You got to apply it to Dame Sarr. You got to apply it to Boumtje Boumtje, whatever. Like, they're going to start pointing fingers at players at other teams. And I don't know who said this, so forgive me for not quoting the name, but somebody on Twitter basically was like, half of the top 25 preseason teams have one player that in theory should be affected by this already on their team. And that, again, is something that the NCAA has to figure out the enforcement mechanism, and they can't start picking and choosing. And funny enough, as much as I don't really like the dude, they can't start with Will Wade. Like, that's the easy one, but Will Wade's going to snap back and go, well, this guy's doing it. This guy's doing it because we know how that bird sings. So the problem is that until they issue specific guidance, this air of ambiguity is going to lead to more confusion, because what's working for Duke and get players from SC Barcelona, again, the second best team in the ACB, one of the best teams in EuroLeague, is going to be different from the application to the same guy who's going to UNC, or the same guy the guy from the same team going to UNC or going to LSU or going to Kansas, for example, because we just talked about them. That is where they, once again, have thrown ambiguity into the mix in order to say that they're doing something, but in essence has made everybody even more confused. And because of that, I think, and I don't know any inside baseball here, but I'm sure Duke is sitting there saying, hey, with this guidance that you got right here, this makes no damn sense. So tell me, is Dame cool? Is JBB cool? And let's get that in writing so that we can go ahead and proceed with our team, as opposed to having this air of ambiguity over everything. And when people come and start, and they will start pointing the finger and say, well, that guy's ineligible, why not Dame Sarr? Duke's going to have this piece of paper that says, boom, it says he's eligible, says JBB is eligible, get out of my face. So that is where the legal sense comes in. And I believe that this is going to be applied. Again, that's an emotional thing. What's written on paper says that if a player is playing in one of these leagues that they've listed, that they're likely going to be ineligible. That is the problem that needs to be solved. And the NCAA is just once again throwing more confusion on top of it.
Yeah, look, everyone has identified that this is something where the NCAA needs to come with some clarity, and they need to explain exactly what the criteria are so everyone knows who can be recruited, who can be signed, and who can't. Donald, one of the things that you read a little while back in that NCAA guidance was pre-enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
I strongly suspect that what the NCAA is going to go ahead and say is, if you're someone who's currently in college, Dame Sarr, Nicholas Advalas, who was at Virginia Tech last year, is transferred to UNC. We can list, there are a whole bunch of them, of guys who are currently in school. Tista Ritter is a great example. I think the NCAA is going to say, we already cleared you. You were eligible. You're going to maintain your eligibility. I think that what they're going to say is, in keeping with the age-based model, which we've heard is going to get passed in June. There was talk it might get passed this week. They put it off a little bit, but this is the 5 years of eligibility model that is going to go into effect. That they say absolutely is going to go into effect. They just haven't finished voting on it and putting it all in place. It's going to happen in June now that they're going to vote on it. That age-based, that 5 years of eligibility model, they're probably going to say, the clock starts on these guys when they sign their pro contracts. The same way the clock starts when you enroll in college. And as a result, some of these guys who are 24, 25 years old are not going to be eligible for NCAA basketball. I think the NCAA will come up with a ruling, something like, I'm not saying that they'll necessarily link the two things together, but I think the ruling will be something like that. What bothers the NCAA, what bothers other coaches, is the notion that my roster of 19, 20, 21-year-olds has to compete against a roster of 23, 24, 25-year-olds and up. That's not fair. And that's what the NCAA, I think, wants to nip in the bud. And they'll figure out some way to phrase things and, eligibility and blah, 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 where they get rid of these older guys who, frankly, are not connected to school, haven't been to a class in years, and should not be competing against college athletes.
And that's the thing. We think they'll do this. We think they want to do this, but they need to come out and say it. And the problem was, and this is just rehashing an old argument, they don't want to do it because they don't want any grounds for somebody to sue them and violate and
well, look, they're going to get sued. They just want to they want to have their ducks in a row so that when they get sued, they can defend it.
No, I think the issue is not even just the suit part, it's the antitrust exemption that they want from Congress. And to do that, they need, once the antitrust is in place in their mind, that's when they'll institute these hard, rigid rules, because then there will be no way for a lawsuit to shape that. They're waiting in the ambiguities so they can cover all their bases and kind of say, it's the same thing as the G League, right? In the span of, 3 weeks, they allowed G League players to sign, and then they took that away. Right, that was in a span of like 3.5 weeks.
Yeah,
Bediako and some guys sued and some guys didn't. The JUCO rule as well. Hey, we're going to give you 2 extra years, but wait, not that guy, not this guy over here. That everything is on a case by case basis with them because they need the antitrust exemption. Once they do that, then it's going to be, hey, clock starts when you're 18 years old. It stops when you're 23, and that's it. And nobody and nothing else. And so the problem is the age-based rule in some ways will also add confusion to the international guidance that they have, because you're going to have guys who fall into both of those camps, and you're going to say, what happens to the Tista Ritters that are 23? What happens to the guys who are 25 and 26 who were cool, and now you're saying they're not? Like, those are things that they need to come out and say, but they're not going to actually do that because they want the antitrust first. And so that is where somebody needs to be an adult in the room. And Jason, unfortunately, they won't let you and I in the room. So we just got to talk about it here. So anything else? Last word to you before we wrap up.
No, not much. I want to point out, by the way, that, we spent like a week waiting for news. We didn't have much to talk about. And then suddenly on Friday, we got John Blackwell, we got the Kansas game, we got JBB doing crazy stuff over at the Next Gen tournament, and we got the NCAA dropping this rule, this ambiguous rule we've been talking about, and we had Jared McCain. Like, folks, I know people may be like, "Where's the DBR? What happened to the podcast?" There just wasn't much to talk about, and then suddenly on Friday, we got the Friday Memorial Day news dump. We had 5 topics that just fell into our laps.
So yeah. And I will say, just for programming notes, over the next, month or so, Jason, you're going to be on vacation. I'm going to be traveling for the World Cup. We're going to be all over the place. Scott Rich, you're going to hear a lot from him. He's going to be, standing in for Jason when he's on the road. Sometimes myself.
Maybe.
I'm
I'm not sure. I may try and find time for you. We'll see.
You're on a cruise. You better go enjoy that cruise. But yeah, there's going to be some, and honestly, we have to wait for some of this news to hit before we get it. But
we got the draft, man. We got the draft coming up.
We got the draft coming up. We got the draft. We're going to start doing pre-draft stuff before Jason gets out of here. We're going to try and record some of that stuff, so you will hear that. We also put out the word on social media. If you guys have questions, this is the perfect time. If you want us to have content, you got to give us something to talk about. So come with the questions, make them good. DBR Podcast at gmail.com. And if we get a topic that we're like, ooh, and that piques the brain, we're gonna talk about it on the show. Last word.
Yeah, and by the way, I'd love. We've gotten a couple questions that are kind of interesting, and we'll probably pull those out a little bit later on this summer. We'll see. I don't think your question has to be something obvious. Who do you expect to be the starters for Duke next year? That kind. I don't need that kind of question. Get crazy, people.
I want to think. Yeah, we want to think. We need to be like, ooh, let me stew on that for a minute. And Jason, you mentioned there was one question I was like, ooh. I mean, I know the answer, like part of the answer, but some of it I have to think about. So we might pull that one out at a later date, but that's for a later date. Everyone, please enjoy the Memorial Day weekend. Of course, take a moment to observe why we have Memorial Day. And for all those soldiers out there who made the ultimate sacrifice, we thank you. He's Jason. I'm Donald. It's time to get out of here. It's time for the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.
Hi, this is Ben Green from The Athletic FC. The podcast you're about to listen to is brought to you by Hotels.com. As a Hotels.com member, you save up to 20% on hundreds of thousands of hotels and earn rewards on every single stay, which means the trips you're taking now help pay for the ones you're already dreaming about. And unlike some other places, there are no blackout dates, so when you want to travel, your rewards are ready to go. So the next time you're planning a work trip or a getaway, make sure to book it at Hotels.com and start earning rewards. Hotels.com, it's all in the name.